for this title. And he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them.
Yes, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Warm Down. Delighted today to be joined by Manchester United author and historian and all-round top bloke, Roy Cavanagh. Roy, thank you for joining me. Before we get stuck into today's conversation, we are brought to you by the good folks at The Athletic. If you would like 50% off your yearly membership and a month's free trial, then you need to go to theathletic.co.uk/Howson. That is theathletic/Howson. And there's some absolutely belting writing going on there. Daniel Taylor has now been picked up, as well as Andy Mitten, as well as Laurie Whitwell. They're just absolutely dominating football journalism in this country. No clickbait, no adverts, just really good top draw writing that's well researched. If you're not on there, I mean, I don't know how you've got to this far and not actually managed to at least go and take a month free trial from it, because it's absolutely banging. Anyway, links in the description. Let's get stuck into it. Roy, how are you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Good to see you.
So I've got Roy's book here. United in the 60s. That wasn't a bad period, was it?
No, a very great period.
Not a bad period at all.
Interestingly, on the 1st of January 1960, United were in 10th position. On the 31st of December 1969, they were in 11th position. In between, they won 2 league titles, 2 runners-up, FA Cup, 4 times semi-finalists, Intercity Fairs Cup semi-finalists, which is the Europa League now, League Cup semi-finalists, and won the European Cup and 2
the World
semi-finals.
Championships as well, and World Champions.
And they were in the World Championship. They weren't the World Champions.
Oh, no, it was Independiente beat us.
Estudiantes. Yeah. Beat us physically.
Beat us physically, yeah. A crazy decade. We were just talking before we came on air, wasn't it? The glamour and the glitz and the glow of the 60s, and then the 90s. It kind of leaves that 70s and 80s period in the middle where you had Buchanan, Robbo and Whiteside and McGrath and players like this. It's almost like a dark age of Manchester United's history, isn't it?
Yeah, 26 years without a title, and lots of great nights in the Cups, of course, and European games as well. Barcelona comes to mind, obviously, around that time. But you're right, we won 11 games on the trot. One of the seasons, first 11, and finished 4th. I mean, how do you come 4th in a 2-horse race? But they were a really good side. They didn't have weaknesses, really. I mean, as you say, McGrath at centre half, Moran, Robson in midfield, Remy Moses, Norman, Stapleton, Strachan at his time there as well. Arthur Albiston fullback. I think the secret was Robbo's injuries, and I make a comment because I was fortunate enough to see the Busby Babes, and I wrote the first biography of Duncan Edwards, and people say to me, was he as great as everyone says he was? And he was an outstanding player for 2021 when sadly he got killed. A marvellous footballer. But that team was a full all-round side. I mean, I'd fail my 11 plus, which it was in those days. But Wood, Folkesburn, Coleman, Jones, Edwards, Berry, Whelan, Taylor, Violet and Pegg, that was the Busby Babes. But if Duncan did miss a game, which was not that often, they didn't fold. You got the opinion in the 80s particularly, if Robbo missed a game, we was in the mire. And that was a big difference that I felt between those two teams. And it really was the league title that stopped that era from being a great side.
Is that more of an indictment on the team around them than the individual Robbo and Edwards themselves, do you think?
I think it is, particularly when we've mentioned the names that were alongside Robbo. I mean, it was Goalie Bailey, and right back you'd have Gidman would be around perhaps at that time, Mickey Duxbury, Arthur Albiston, Remy Moses, Moran, McGrath, Strachan.
Was Stapleton, Bobby Charlton or Tommy Taylor, though?
Well, no, that's a fair comment. No, probably not, which is where sometimes Duncan, this image of Duncan Edwards from the 58 team, you forget that Roger Byrne at left back, I still remember him.
Eddie captain.
Yeah, Tommy Taylor, as great a centre forward as you've ever seen. David Pegg on the wing, and Johnny Berry on the other one, Billy Whelan, Dennis Violet, a Manchester lad, one of the greats, the all-time greats.
He's got actually a fantastic documentary as well.
Yeah, his daughter did it, and
Yeah,
I had the honour of, with the boxing trainer Brian Hughes, we wrote the biography Violet in the early 90s about Dennis. That came about because I'd done a small book on Eddie Coleman, because I used to live down by the docks in Salford.
That's Media City for anyone
Yeah.
my age or younger.
I like going to Media City, but it does the other side of Trafford.
Why does it have a sign on the front of it saying Manchester Docks when it's very definitely in Salford?
Well, a very good friend of mine who actually helped create Media City. He tells me a story that when it was first created, the docks and everything, it was going to be Salford and Manchester Docks, or Manchester and Salford Docks. But the story was that Salford Council in those days, and that was way back when it was, I'm not talking in the 80s, I'm talking way back, actually reneged or didn't have the money. And so quite simply, it's got Manchester Docks on the top, which is, as you say, it most definitely is in Salford. But then again, Salford, being a Salfordian, being born in Salford, still live in an area of Salford. Salford's Salford and Manchester's Manchester. And, I'm just going off slightly at a tangent, but...
No, we live off tangent, don't worry about it.
But in that book in 1963, there used to be a racecourse, which was called Manchester Racecourse, but it was most definitely in Salford. It was quite close to where the cliff is.
Right.
And their last meeting was in 1963, and there was 20,000 there. And on the same day, United played Tottenham at Old Trafford with 60,000 there. So, you'd think nowadays, if Manchester did have a racecourse, for example, or Salford even, especially with having someone like Fred Donner, who's also a Salford lad.
It's crazy that we don't have one, actually.
Yeah, Haydock Park's the nearest, really, Chester, Haydock Park. So.
There's some small ones, like Catterick has one.
Yeah,
places
Wetherby.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely. In saying that, I think they do, because when you drive up there to the northeast, of course, a lot of the trainers are out there, and there's lots of big fields out there where they have the training the horses. But it is a good point you make that the 70s and 80s seems to be the dark area, but there were so many incredible nights in that dark area, weren't there?
Like some of my uncles got involved in the naughtier side of the 70s and 80s, shall we say, and he says getting relegated was like the best thing ever.
Oh,
and like you can't imagine that now. I'd love to, just for an experiment, see what our fan base would look like if we got relegated today.
Well, it might come back a better one. I mean, there's one of the games in the promotion season they played Sunderland. I mean, 62,000 on an incredible game.
We had the highest attendance in the country in the second division, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that might have been it. The Sunderland game. The
average.
Oh, the average.
Yeah, the average attendance.
Yeah,
was the most supported team in the country,
and that was a good side. I mean, if you look at it with Buchan, Macari, and Greenhoffs, and Stuart Pearson, so we had a really good side then, and we came second or third when we won the cup. I think when we beat Liverpool. But of course, the Southampton one is one which is interesting. I remember going to the quarter-final game against Leicester. We were a decent side at home, Frank Worthington type of thing playing for them. It's going to be a hard game. And on the morning of the match, I thought, I fancy United for the cup this year. Big
this
time.
76.
Yeah, big time gambler here. And they were 8-1 on the morning of the quarter final with, or the fifth round tie it was with Leicester away. The fifth round tie, Leicester away. And I stuck a fiver on at 8-1. So, of course, they get through to the final and they play in Southampton on the final. So I'm going to win 45 quid. And Southampton were...
Which in 76 is what, about 2.4 million?
Well, yeah, just the 2 million. Yeah, but Southampton were amazing odds on the day, and I didn't even lay off because there's no way Southampton's going to win here. So I went down at Wembley, sat there in misery, and drove home. But of course, the following year we were back and we beat Liverpool, and that was incredible.
But did we get promoted and come second in the league?
Yeah, and One of the interesting things about the Busby Babes time and the 60s time and the 70s time, you mentioned it about Robbo in the 80s, is the squads. They didn't have big squads. In those days, if you look at the final appearance figures, you'd probably have 7 or 8 people played 39, 40, it was 42 games in those days. Played an amazing, you didn't, Busby didn't, and the other managers didn't, and the other clubs didn't as well. They had the 11, and they stuck to it. And if someone was injured or was absent for whatever, suspended, in Dennis Law's case occasionally, they put another player in, but they didn't say, oh, well, we'll leave 4 out this week because we're playing a relatively easy side at home and give 4 of the reserves a game. And I think a lot of the times when you look, the number of semi-finals they got to, and some of the times, like you've just said, they win the cup and come second, and it must have been tiredness. I look at a side, the year they won the league in 1965, which was the first time they'd won the league since the Busby Babes. And that season they played in what was still then the Intercities Fairs Cup, which is now the Europa League.
Greatest goddamn competition the world ever created.
It will be if we win. But we actually played 60 matches that season because we got to the semi-final of the Intercities, we got to the semi-final of the FA Cup, and we won the league.
And this is when getting a train to London takes 6 hours as well.
Only 4.5 in the cold. But yeah, you're right. And no motorways really and all that type of thing. But of the 60 games, 8 played 55 or more.
Wow.
And it would have been 9 if Dennis hadn't got suspended. So you see what I mean? That right at the very end, when it was the crux, the semi-finals of the competition with your league, tiredness and things like that would come in.
I'm sure, yeah. The game has moved on as well. I don't think it's probably even feasible for a team to compete on multiple fronts now because they're covering 2-3 times the distance in a match compared to what they used to do.
Mr. Klopp doesn't even fancy playing the League Cup. Allegedly.
Very interesting to see how that goes down, actually, knowing what happened with us in 2000.
Very much so. I mean, of course, it's clickbait, but I don't go on as much to TalkSport now, but Adrian Dunham's on TalkSport last night. Oh, well, we should give Liverpool a bye to the 3rd or 4th round. And you think, excuse me, and can you remember back Amir?
United won the treble.
And
we wasn't even allowed to defend our trophy. To defend our trophy. Because we couldn't, because the fixture, they wouldn't move the round for us and they wouldn't allow us a bye, even though we were going off representing. And we was told to compete in the World Club Championships, I think in memory by Tony Blair's government, because they thought it would aid the 2006 World Cup bid,
absolutely,
which we didn't win.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really, and it will be very interesting how they approach it. So watch your space to have it.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one for that. Klopp moans about everything. It's hilarious, actually, that Liverpool... I'm not going to say they tried to throw the game, but they definitely didn't give a shit about winning it.
No.
Looking at the starting 11 that they played and still managed to find their way through. Arsenal, you absolutely supply the laughs every single time. Cheers, lads.
Yeah, I mean, that must be seriously embarrassing, isn't it? Especially with the 2 goals up twice, I think.
I think at one point, was it 5?
It was
4-2?
3-1, 4-2, and then 5-4.
Score 5 goals and still lose. That's a bad day at the office, isn't it?
Very bad day. Against the C team.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons being made to the class of '92 and this current crop of youngsters that are coming through, which I think is a bit giddy on the outset because of what those lads went to achieve, but the way they've been bringing and brought into the team, there's a lot of similarities now. Obviously, I remember that team as it was coming through. They were drip-fed into a team full of leaders, which I definitely think this team lacks. I mean, Mark Hughes, Ince, Robbo was still hanging on a little bit, Schmeichel, Bruce, Pallister, and obviously the man himself, Cantona. That we do not have. But in the 60s, or even the 50s actually, when the lads was coming through into the team, was there this leadership? I know we had Byrne, who was the England captain, but it seemed like an extremely young side that we would be putting out, the Babes.
Yeah, very much so. Again, though, time travels good or bad. It depends what you've done in that time. But the final side that played around that time, because Busby made some dramatic changes 2 months before the crash. that team I read out of Wood, Folkes, Byrne, Coleman, Jones, Edwards, Berry, Whelan, Taylor, Barrett and Pegg. For them, they'd won the league 2 years on the trot, been in FA Cup final the year before and got cheated with it because there was no substitutes. In fact, I had the real honour and pleasure of meeting Matt Busby 2 or 3 times, interviewing him. And he told me a story of the final against Villa in 1957, which would have given United the first double since 1897. And he woke up on the morning of the game in the hotel and he was so confident that that team was going to win. And he said he went round individually every breakfast, every bedroom at 8:30, knocked on the door and went in, just to check they'd not had a bad night, they'd got flu. He said, and that was it. Everyone was fit, we were going to win. And then 6 minutes into the game, Peter McParlin, their left winger, made a run of like 20 yards and just crashed his forearm into the goalkeeper's cheekbone. He's carried off. He's centre half, no substitutes. Jackie Blanchard goes in goal. You're playing with 10 men. We got beat 2-1, and ironically, Matt Palin got both their goals. So you are right, but the team, he brought some younger players in, which culminated with the game in Belgrade. He signed Harry Gregg, first of all, the goalkeeper. And he still had Eddie Coleman, he still had Duncan Edwards, but he promoted Bobby Charlton, he promoted Kenny Morgans. But the other players were only 22, 23. Byrne was probably 29 or so. Johnny Berry, the winger, was also that age. But they had that authority and seniority around them. And of course, the class of 92, I actually think that's the perfect storm. If you've got 5, for argument's sake, and they actually had more, but if you've got 5 really talented players, and you've got 5 or 6 really good players as well, it may just be going slightly over the edge now, but of course the younger ones can match that up for the energy with them. I think you've got a perfect storm. So really, in a way, today, you think about bringing 1 in or 2 in. If you close your eyes and thought, just say for argument's sake, we were playing Bournemouth at home tomorrow, you could see the advantage of having Laird, Williams, the young Welsh lad, Levitt, good player, Garner, of course, Greenwood in the side, possibly Chong, but certainly those 5 in the side with 6 players of strength around them. But the 6 players around them, are they the finished article themselves? And you know, so that's the situation.
With the class of 92 as well, we lumped them together as the class of 92, but they was actually spread out over several years.
Yes.
Of making debuts, probably a good 4 years from Giggs' debut to who made the last one. Did Beckham make? No, it wasn't Beckham.
You won't be far
Martin
off.
Scholes, I think.
Yeah,
made
probably
the last debut out of that group, because I think Gary Neville made it.
Phil Neville,
possibly Phil. Yeah, Nicky Butt made it quite early. Yeah, Butt and Giggs played in that absolute bumming that we got in the new camp off Barcelona. Didn't. I love when people go, can't play the youngsters in case they get smashed.
Yeah,
didn't affect them too.
No.
If they've got the mentality, they're fine.
Absolutely.
We can still include Scott McTominay and Marcus Rashford in this group of youngsters.
Yeah.
And I think you add those 2 into it, you're talking now potentially 7. But we don't have Brian Robson.
No.
We don't have a Roger Byrne. We don't have a Mark Hughes, a Paulins, an Eric Cantona. We don't have those players, and I think that is probably the issue. But is there a way to just bring these lads in and allow them to grow into that role? Because I'm hearing a lot of stories that some of these youngsters are taking the piss out of our senior players in training.
Well, I would say there is a way, but we've talked about the support, and we've talked about your dad, for example, a man who's watched the side in the 40s, 50s and 60s, definitely.
Oh, no, my granddad has.
Your granddad, sorry.
My granddad, 50s on much.
Yeah. And now, of course, there was no social media there, and if you won 2-1 and then got beat 3-1, you followed the team, you followed the club. That was it. And I do fully understand the difference today, but I don't think that you've got the time. And you'd be a very brave manager, wouldn't you, to do it if it did go wrong. Now, the point you make there about those the five I mentioned, 4 or 5 I mentioned, plus Matt Tominey, who's come on absolutely incredibly.
He's
I
outstanding.
mean, it's just really incredibly. And Rashford, you've 7. Now you've got De Gea, you've got your goalkeeper as well. So there's 8. You would hope Maguire. There's 9.
You could absolutely throw Axel in as well next to him.
Well, you could, but you've got 2 places. Just imagine those 2 being 2 of Robson, Cantona, and Hughes. Just imagine 2 of them. I think you and I would, never mind my £5 bet to win the cup in 1976. You might be up in the ante because first of all you'd have your spine, wouldn't you? And I look at that side, and can you imagine? I know we would romantically go with Robson and Cantona first, but can you imagine a Mark Hughes type centre forward in that team? Because first of all, the ball would not be coming back. It goes up. He holds the ball.
Holds the defence off.
And that, that in itself is like a centre forward, and he scored goals, of course. It's like having a centre forward and a holding midfielder in the same part. So, while romantically you'd think, it would be a Robson and a Cantona, in the present setup, Mark Hughes up there, I do think the other position would be in midfield, a really dominant midfield player. And then you could take a chance with your backline. I mean, you've got your De Gea's, you've got Laird, you've got Williams, you've got
Wan-Bissaka's been
Axel.
a decent signing as well so far, good signing.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a very good signing.
Seems like he's got a lot of character about him.
But Matt Tominey in midfield, if he had the finished article alongside him and young Garner,
those 2 especially, if they had a prime Robson,
they had in between them or whatever, and then you've got the centre forward who is holding it. So when you look around now, who you would go out and sign, it doesn't have to be a fancy Dan really. It has to fit now, not as many positions as we thought even a month ago. It really, if you've got the balls to give more than Williams and Greenwood still in the periphery and whatever. What I did like very much, not much got mentioned about it, because I was just talking to you about the number of games players used to play in a season. What doesn't have me off nowadays is that when someone gets to the first team squad, they suddenly stop playing in what you and I would call the reserve team.
Yeah.
And it was reassuring last Friday night that Greenwood certainly played, Chong certainly played in the side when they played at Lee last week. Whereas
Tuesday night the leasing.com trip looks like we're really going for
it. Absolutely. Greenwood played, absolutely.
Laird
played.
Galbraith's got an absolute peach.
He did, didn't he? And I wondered how Greenwood got that one in.
Final one.
Not really. You've not seen it from behind, actually, have you? Because he sort of wriggled down the line. And Galbraith gave him the ball, by the way. He gave him the pass.
That's what I said. Galbraith is so unfortunate because he's kind of like in and amongst other players in his position. I mean, I think Levitt's probably the next one in midfield that'll get a nod. But Levitt and Galbraith, they're both in the but they're both internationals now. They're both in the international setup for Wales and Northern Ireland before they're even close to getting a sniff of Manchester United, which is mad.
That's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I spoke to a couple of lads from Northern Ireland, and they say like they're delighted to have another United Northern Irish player. We've got a long history of very good ones, obviously through Busby and Bestie and before Sammy McIlroy, Johnny Evans, and like half of that Northern Irish teams, Healy and all them lot.
The book I wrote before this one was called Gentleman John, and it was about Johnny Carey.
Did he play for both Northern and the Republic?
Well, and of course, in up till the war. Or just after the war, and then UEFA or FIFA, whoever, then deemed it that no, there were 2 separate countries, and you had to play for the Republic or for Northern Ireland. But he actually played for both of them, and Busby actually said in about 1947, 48, then, so that was prior to the Busby Babe, but Busby actually said that Johnny Carey was in his opinion, was the greatest footballer in the world at that time. He played in at least 9 positions for Manchester United, including a full game in goal. And this came about, again, younger people today would think someone's taking the mickey here, but we were playing Sunderland, 1950-51, And we took 12 people up to stay overnight in Durham. And the goalkeeper took Hill on the Saturday morning. And at 10:15, when he got ruled out, kick-off was early, 2:15, floodlights, etc. You could not get a train to Sunderland or drive from Manchester to Sunderland to be there for the 2 o'clock kick-off. So they were stuck up in the northeast, and they had a 12-man, but he was an outfield player, and Johnny Carey went in goal for the whole game, and we drew 2-2. So, you know, and I had the pleasure of meeting him, beautiful, soft-spoken, and he had a fantastic career as a footballer and a manager.
He's another one that sort of gets missed out in that pantheon of legends at the club because of he was just prior to the Babes, but he obviously took us to one of our first, the first championship post-war.
52, and a cup, 48.
First trophy post-war, first trophy under Busby, first title, and then Busby dismantled his team to bring through the Babes. Didn't he? He was clearly very good at that.
For 2 years, really. Now, that is the question you did ask me about 10 minutes ago, so I'll get back to the answer. So that is a very interesting point, that Busby had his team, which you and I would look at through the history books, of the 48 cup winning side and the 52 league championship side. But don't forget, they'd missed 6 years of their career because of the Second World War. So a lad at 20 in 1939, when it restarted in 46, he's 27. Another 4 years. And so the careers of that...
Sir Matt himself?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Virtually the whole team needed replacing. And he'd scoured. In fact, the story goes that the first season back after the war was 46-47, and United came second in the league, and the reserves won the Central League. And Matt allegedly spoke to Jimmy Murphy after the season and said, right, how many of this team I could bring forward? And he said, none of them are good enough to play in the first team. So, because there were guys at 25 and 26, but they were good enough at reserve level, but they weren't going to improve, if you see. So that's when they really set the stall out for a younger generation and really scoured the whole of Great Britain for young talent, which is where Edwards from Dudley, Bobby Charlton from the North East, as examples, Mark Jones and David Pegg from over in Yorkshire. Eddie Coleman, of course, on the doorstep near where I was, near the docks, which is now Media City. That's where he was born. That's where he lived. So, you know, the Billy Whelan they brought over from Dublin. But there was 2 years there where we probably come 8th or 9th and got beat in the cup. But he had that time and he could see, like you and I can see now, if you close your eyes and think of those 5 players now, and thinking of class of 92, you would pretty well say in 2 years' time, those 5, injury permitting, are going to make it. But would someone give you the time to wait? Well, they wouldn't give you the time to wait.
Well, no, I mean...
Because Ollie was going to be out 3 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Apparently so, yeah.
Pochettino was coming back in.
Liverpool,
all that stuff.
If we'd lost Liverpool.
Yeah.
Even... You don't have to go back that far. Sir Alex Ferguson, from going, you know, his first proper season with us, he comes second, and then he takes us to 11th and then 13th. You're gone now. You're not going to survive that. I did speak to Martin Edwards, and I asked him, was Fergie gone, as everybody seems to think he is, if Mark Robins doesn't score that goal? And I can only take him at his word, and he said no. Yeah. And he said... I said that, you know, he goes, why do you think that? And I was like, well, obviously the papers and that at the time, the press, the fanzines, and he goes, papers are always saying that. Yeah. He was saying that now. Yeah. And you're like, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, it is a good point, but it is, the pressure was definitely building, and if they had got beat at Notts Forest, I mean, in the third round of the Cup, it would have started surely then, because they'd had 2 or 3 bad seasons. Interestingly, a guy that perhaps you've had on, if not, I recommend him, is... very good mate of mine, Pete Molyneux, who wrote the book
Terra people to come on
Terra Fergie. And Pete's the top guy. And of course, I remember going to the game, and funnily enough, it was against Crystal Palace, who were the team we beat in the cup final in the May. And the game was at Old Trafford in early December 1989. And we were not very good. We were, mid-table, and by mid-table we were talking 10th, 11th. And unlike today, we'd spent the money. We'd bought Pallister, we'd bought Ince, we'd bought Mickey Phelan.
Big signings, all of them.
Yeah.
Was Pallister a record for a defender?
Yeah, for a defender. McClare, and players such as that. Oh no, McClare might not have been in that time. But I think we brought Hughes back, had we? From
I think McClare and Hughes was both there at the time.
Yeah.
Actually.
So there was a lot of money had been spent, and the team was meandering around in mid-table, and we got beat at home by Crystal Palace. And those were the days you went up on a Saturday and paid at the gate. And this is Christmas 1989, November. And Pete had this bed sheet and he put Terrar Fergie, famous scenario. And of course, they did win the cup. And I was just saying to you lads in the back there, you talk about great games. It wasn't a great game, but from 1954, from my first game, 1954, 65 years now, one of the great memories was the Blackburn Rovers match when we finally won the trophy in 93. I mean, that night was absolutely hilariously party time.
Well, my enduring memory from that game, Italian football was big on Channel 4 at the time.
James Richardson.
It had only just started. And I remember I used to watch Football Italia. I think like every kid my age, if anyone plays that theme tune, you get excited. And at the time, because it was just edging out of the hooligan days. Stadiums were starting to become all-seater. I did a couple of years, stood on the Stretford End before they demolished it, but I'm 10 at the time. The flags is all I can remember from that night. There was just, as far as the eye could see, the entire ground.
At the forecourt outside.
Oh, it was outrageous.
Party atmosphere doesn't do it justice, does it?
It was mad.
I mean, the game was very average, except for Palace.
I was on the very back of the Stretford End, which is probably only about 15 rows at the time because it was still half finished, and there was scaffolding behind me. Yeah, but I can remember it. It was brilliant.
I've got a tale which it sticks in your mind. You're dead right, but I remember being at the Stretford End the year we won Busby Bays won the first title.
Is that in black and white, Roy?
Am I in black and white?
Is your memory in black and white?
No, my memory. Well, it was black and white because everything then was black and white. People. There was no colour. You didn't see people in red shirts except the 11 on the pitch. You know what I mean? Right. There was no colour. People had grey coats on and everything. There was no colour. And I remember my uncle coming around.
Is that why it's so vivid in people's memories? And the green of the pitch,
the green and the colours. That's why you looked at teams like West Bromwich Albion, with blue and white stripes, if you saw them, or the old goal of Wolves. Yeah. And because it was the colour, that was the only... Seriously. And that's why I love the goalies, because the goalie had a different colour than the other 10 players. But my uncle come round, I remember, and they were playing Blackpool, and if they won, they'd won the title, 56. And he said, did I want to go? I said, do I want to go? Yeah. So I went with my uncle, and we went down, and United Road was crammed. And the Stretford End was totally open then, by the way. The Stretford End was just massed back like the big old tent at Villa and whatever. And we managed to get in the Stretford End, and he pulled a great flanker because the junior, the kid's turnstile, he come alongside me. Because if I'd have gone in, he might not have got in with the adults, you with me? And he said, look, it's only 9 or 10. So he managed to get in. And a bit like you've just said then, I then looked up, and there was this massive stairs to go up to the back of the Stretford End. So I climbed up. I can remember it vividly, and this is April 1956. There's 62,000 in the ground. There's nearly 10,000 locked out. And I've got 6-foot blokes in front of me, and I'm stood at the back, couldn't see a bloody thing.
People's backs.
Couldn't see a bloody thing. And if you turn round, behind Old Trafford then, there used to be a big engineering company called Glover's Cables, and they had a work side, and there was a football pitch behind. And I can remember seeing Glover's Cables play that afternoon. I could not see the game. Physically couldn't see the game. It went, imagine the Stretford all the way back. Where they used to have seats, do you remember, right at the back?
Never saw them in my own eyes.
Yeah, but it was it was open, the whole stadium, except for a little cover on the United Road and the main stand.
The only memories I've got really of the Stretford End is my dad used to stick me through the railings, sit on that little crash barrier at the front, legs through the railings, holding onto the railings with my little Man United gloves, which I don't even get away with wearing now, but they were fucking awesome at the time. And then he would just put me there and then piss off. And I had he could have gone home. I had no idea where he was. And then he'd come down at half time and go, "You all right?" And I go, "Yeah." "You're all right," in a bit. And I'd just go again. And it was, I don't know if it's left or right side because I'm too young to know what the crack was with it, but it was on the slightly just underneath the Wonder Fuel gas thing.
Oh, yeah.
But slightly into the open side on the north side. So I don't know if that was left or right.
That would be, well, again, it would depend.
I don't know which perspective.
Depends what you look at. If you're looking at there, it's the right, and if you're in it, it's the left.
When they call it left side or right side or tunnel, I don't know.
It would be towards the United Road, that, because I think the paddock would cover on the other side.
Yes.
Did you ever get smacked in the face with a ball or something like that?
No, because the railings was always there.
Oh, right.
The railings weren't red.
The
railings weren't red. They were like a burgundy colour. And that just stuck in my mind forever. There was this very deep burgundy colour. They weren't red. And I remember that. And they was smooth because they had 30 years or something of paint on them. They I don't know how often they got painted, but I just can remember them. They weren't like the railings at your school, maybe. They're rusty. But these weren't rusty. They were red painted and smooth with decades of paint over them. I just remember that with it. But it was 2-3 years of that before they knocked it down.
I think people, and again, it's easy. You could watch a team today and they could win 3 games and they're your team, and they lose a game and you suddenly go and watch them. I mean, that's ridiculous. And the word history, whilst it's boring when you're at school, but to know the history and to think back and the respect and what this club has continually, and churned is the wrong word, but has produced in their own players, their young players, and success, makes them a very, very special club. And, you might go 5 years, 6 years, you might go 26 years, but somewhere in that 26 years, you were mentioning there the 70s and 80s, about the depot, but incredibly, the relegation and the second division, the 76 cup final, the 77, the 79 with Arsenal, the early 80s under Ron, 83, 85, the 11 games undefeated at the side, beating Barcelona of Brian Robson. Even though there's an interesting boot, there's 20 years there of nothing really. Except 3 or 4 cuts, and I'm not belittling the cuts, but nothing for what we're used.
Those memories, and I speak to anyone that's just older than me, because my first game was 1990, but anyone that's just older than me, anyone that remembers that Barcelona game, anyone remembers Big Ron, anyone remembers the relegation or those cup finals, those are enduring memories. But if you ask me about anything, apart from a few standout moments of the 2000s, we were just very good. Like, winning the title in 2003, does that stand out to anybody? Not really.
No.
Does winning the 2001? Not really.
No.
I think there's some better memories in the struggle to get to the top than when you're bobbing along at the top.
I think that 99 season, I remember being at the Juventus game. And in fairness, Juventus were a fair side.
The game in the world, isn't it?
Game at Old Trafford, Zidane, Conte, who was the Chelsea manager, and they looked the business.
Del Piero.
Oh, I don't. Yeah.
Was it the Uruguayan lad? Is it Montero?
The centre forward who got
Inzaghi.
Yeah, and they were winning 1-0, and they weren't just winning 1-0; they were controlling it. And Giggs I was in the Stretford End that day, and Giggs got the equaliser in the 91st minute, and it rocketed in. I remember him rushing to get the ball, and he thought, "Wow, at least we've not lost at home in the European Cup."
It wasn't long after, was it? That was 97 one, wasn't it? Because it was year after Fenerbahce beat us.
Yeah, but we've got away with it, and then of course you're watching the game in Juventus. I didn't go to the game in Juventus, but you're watching the game in Juventus, and we're 2-0 down after 10 minutes. I mean, the game's over, isn't it? You're playing it.
You're not going to be an Italian team away. You might
a great Italian team, and you're 3-1 down on aggregate, and they've got an away goal.
Yeah, we've got to score 3. We're not going to happen.
So again, we've talked of names. The present side, Keane, McTominay's McTominay's emergence is incredible. I mean, I've got a great mate who's watching that all life. McTominay, no, not going to make it. Not going to make it. Because you do get biased that way, don't you?
You watch the academy as much as I do. He never shone.
No, absolutely. In fact, he played centre-half, centre-forward, or whatever. Where was he? I mean, you remember Rossi when he played, and people like, and Gomez in recent years. You know,
for me, Willett was infinitely better than McTominay in that midfield.
Absolutely. And you think, no, he'll be on the transfer list at the end of the season. And then, of course, Mourinho making him his player of the season, and then of course sticking him at centre half, and you know, with no experience alongside him, and you get beat 3-1 at West Ham, and it's like, is he being hung out to dry here? But to have that strength, to really have that strength, is more than impressive, because he's got something about him which, if he turns into be a good individual footballer, you know, on the ball, scoring goals and things such as that, that will be big bonuses. I think he's got something that we haven't got anywhere else in the team at the minute, which is leadership qualities and also self-belief in himself and confidence. Well, if we're getting beat one day, come on, we'll get it back. And that is more sometimes than having the fancy Dans who can beat 6 men and score wonder goals, isn't it?
Well, teamwork, a team.
Yeah.
Beats a collection of individuals
every
time.
He's a really, really important player for us. It'd be interesting how we develop now, because there's a run of fixtures where we shouldn't get beat. And
can you imagine we refined that belief that we had in Solskjaer's first couple of months, and we go on another run like that?
What's interesting, of course, and it happens a lot with a lot of clubs and a lot of managers, but how do you define going to Cardiff City and winning 5-0, something like that? I think it was his first game.
5-1? Was it 5-1?
Yeah. And then going 17, 19 games and losing, 1, 2? Going to the Arsenal and winning. Going to Tottenham to win. Arsenal in the Cup, Chelsea in the Cup, Tottenham in the league. Well, we're lucky or not, and I know De Gea had a game. But
I'd rather be lucky than good.
You know, and then suddenly, and Paris Saint-Germain, and winning after being, you know...
And he brought Chong and Greenwood on for that as well. It wasn't...
And then he gets the contract, and then the next 10 games are like dire. And so do you put the blame on the players? Because, you know, you're the same players who've responded to whatever. One assumes that the message that's coming from the bench, the very packed bench, you have to say these days, because there's not only Ole, there's Mickey Phelan, there's Michael Carrick. I don't know if Dempsey's come back now, but there's McKenna as well. I mean, we've got enough views on the bench, I would have thought. But it's an interesting one, who's the blame is there. And
we went and watched back the back end of last season and the first part. You can literally split Ollie's reign last season into 2 parts. It was really good and it was really bad parts. Yep. It was really good. Had a lot of players that probably most United fans are saying, I'm glad they've gone, or I'd like them gone. And that's Phil Jones, Ashley Young, and Lukaku was featured in quite a bit of those, but he sort of straddled the good and the bad.
Sanchez played at Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think, scored at Arsenal, I think, in the cup. But yeah, I mean, because Pogba is the real enigma, and I think you and I spoke before about Gomez. I know physically there's a difference there. But and we're talking about this charismatic, strong midfield that we need. And it really is most annoying that on paper, if you forget where he's come from, where he's been, whatever, on paper you have got a very fine midfield footballer.
One of the top central midfielders in the world.
Now, are we just not playing him in the right role? Because, and this may go down like a lead balloon, but even if you then said, okay, let's have McTominay and Fred there in front of the back four and say to him, you are number 10.
Pick Pereira's role.
You don't need to come over the halfway line. You're there. Get the ball, do what you want. If you lose it, you lose it. Don't lose it if you can. But, you know, but create, score, and stay there. Would that be the answer? But, you know, these days, £90 million, one assumes a very fair salary to start with, and But you're starting to think he has had his time.
I'm not 100% sure is here still.
No.
And I think that's probably going to be the issue. If he's made his mind up to go, I don't know if there's a Ronaldo
or his agents made his mind up to go.
I don't know if it's like the Ronaldo situation where you like give us one more year and you can go, and he's gone, cool, I'm injured.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might be. I could very easily be wrong, and he might be genuinely injured.
That's the inference, isn't it? That's the inference.
Yeah, I get the suspicion that there's not 100% honesty coming from his camp, should we say?
Is this too childish a thought? Not just with him, but a simple thing with clubs, not just for United. And I know you could say, well, no, it gives the opposition, whatever. But do you not think that there should be some real, genuine update on injuries? I mean, Axel does his neck or whatever in the kickabout.
No idea what's going on.
Now, is he going to be out till next May, or is he available tomorrow? You know, and it's things such as that gets clouded. We have these press conferences, which sadly I do watch, especially it's supposed to be the Cup one. But he always picks on something that's... So I bet the questions today are about what's your opinion if Klopp wants to take Liverpool out of the League Cup.
It's bollocks, isn't it?
But it's not to do with our scenario.
There's no insight.
But there's no... And it should be that regular every week. Is there anything on Pogba's injury? No, nothing to report. When I say nothing to report, well, what injury has he got? Because till Beckham did his metatarsal, I never knew what a metatarsal was. I still don't. I can't spell it. But I mean, you know, at least you've got an idea, haven't you? And I mean, Axel he's got a great song going. I love the song. And he could do well for us. He could do well. I mean, if you now had to pick your first choice centre-back two, it would probably be Maguire and Tunazabe. It probably.
Yeah, Rojo's sneaking himself in
I like
as well.
it, yeah.
Crazy bastard.
Particularly on a three.
Yeah.
I think particularly on a three.
Yeah, because you can be a bit more reckless, I guess, with a three.
Can he be more reckless?
You can be reckless in selection with a three. I don't know if Rojo can be more reckless, but I do love him and Williams next to each other.
Yeah.
You got to look at that and go, nah, fuck that. And then look on the left-hand side and see two on
Williams.
your left-hand side and
What
see.
Williams did to
Wan-Bissaka.
whatever he's called,
Hudson-Odoi.
Obi or whatever. What he did to him, he has got that streak in him. He has been sent off, you know, in the use and reserve. He has got a resilience and excuse me, that line's my line, mate. Which is
Needed, big time needed. Like football has become altogether too nice, I think, at times, and there needs to be intimidation factor sometimes. And I thought Rojo delivered that perfectly against Liverpool at home in the league.
Yeah.
And I think we've had players along the years. Roy Keane gets called a thug. Roy Keane was a top draw footballer, but if you wanted to tangle, he might leave a foot in. Paul Scholes would leave a foot in. David Beckham could leave a foot in on you. Ryan Giggs could leave a foot in on you. Cantona, Hughes, all of these guys would leave a foot in on you. Like, that's gone out the game, and I would love to see more of what Rojo, Baye, Brandon Williams have got. Williams has got it in buckets. He's off his head, and I love it.
No, you're right. And as I say, I think, you know, you'd like to know, is Tunazabe coming back tomorrow? Is he fit? Can he, whatever? Because you're fans and you want to dream of what your 11's going to be. Are we going to play 4? Are we going to play 5? You want to know who's fit or whatever, don't you?
As someone that's seen and biographied, is that a word? Biographied?
Yeah,
I think that's close enough.
Written books.
Everyone from Johnny Kerry, right, and seen all the way through to the present day. Where does Cantona sit in this view? Because Cantona is what made me fall in love with football, and probably United to a certain extent as well, I think.
I think of the 65 years that I've followed United, the two most important signings have been Dennis Law and Eric Cantona. Now, the reason I say that is that in Dennis Law's case, when he signed in July 1962, I think we'd finished 15th the year before. We'd finished 11th the year before that. It was 4 years since Munich. We had no money and we needed a lift. And when he arrived at 21, his hairstyle was immaculate. He'd come from Italy, of course. He'd got the suit and he looked $1 million. And in the kit, wow, he looked, you know, and he wore white socks that first year, actually. And he's got hold of his cuff. he just looked the part. But not only did he look the part, he was the part. He made the total
His goal
difference.
scoring record's outrageous.
But as a player, you know, he's like slim as anything, and the big centre halves and the hackers around were giving it him, and he was giving it him back, and he was your leader. He was your leader. Of course, we nearly got relegated, but we did win the cup. Paddy Crerran came, and then second the year after, then champions in '65, and then '66 was potentially the best side because we were all at the height when they beat Benfica 5-1. They were all at the height of their ability.
El Beatle time.
Yeah, Georgia, all at the time. And then '67 they won the league again, and I went to West Ham when they won 6-1 right at the end of the season. And in '68 the European Cup. And Dennis was the catalyst. Sadly, he missed the '68. But those 5 years, you had Best Law and Charm, but those 5 years was Dennis Law's time. And then Eric Cantona. We'd had the class of '92. We'd slightly recovered from 4 or 5 average years under Fergie. Finally won. No. Had we won the title? No. Leeds won.
Yeah, Leeds pipped us. We had
Leeds
4 games in
correct.
like 9 days or
Yeah.
something like
Leeds pipped us to the title, and he'd been a catalyst for them. And I think signing him, really, what we've just said about that group of 6 or 7, and the fact that he didn't take the mickey. He himself was a top trainer and whatever, and his old persona, the arrogant look as Dennis had, you know. So I rate him very, very highly. Strangely, if I was picking my top 11, he wouldn't actually appear in mine, but. That is only, again, a point I just made, that all the people, the younger ones, were united. You're supporting a truly magical club, which I can only, off the top of my head, think of one other in the world that rivals it, and that's Real Madrid. There are great clubs like Barcelona, and I'm sure there are other great clubs in England as well. No. Yeah. Walsall had a couple of good years in the 50s. But
Royal Engineers in the early 1900s.
Yeah, Preston's the invincible. Preston's invincible.
Probably
Yeah. But
don't think there's any
you know, we are supporting and involved with an institution, a football club, who deliver and deliver and deliver. And you'll have heartaches, but always remember in life, for the bad days, when the good day comes, it's even better.
Oh, of course.
And it will come.
Can you imagine what the next title party's going to look like?
I hope I'm around.
I hope you're around. Before we move on, Laurie Whitwell's done a really good article on The Athletic about the first time he saw Eric Cantona. I'll throw a link to that in the description, but definitely go and check that out as well. It talks about chasing him with a felt tip in 1996. Cantona is one of those enigmas. So you mentioned he's not in your 11. Mm-hmm. And I saw you on Twitter the other day saying that your 11 boils a little bit of piss. So I'm going to ask you, what's your 11? Because I don't really know. Obviously, players I've not seen, and I'll only be going off what I've been told with some of them. I'm not even sure I can do an 11 with those I've seen with my own eyes. I think I'd have to do it decade by decade. Well,
yeah, I love Barney from Red News. I love Barney, cracking lad, and I write quite a lot for Barney. And a few years ago, I did do, when I'd watched them for 60 years, 65, and I did do the 6 decades, and I picked a team of each decade. And some of the players may well have appeared, whatever. So I had 66 players, and in the end, I got it down to 11. Now, I actually had seen 10 of these play football, but I'd met the 11th and knew what Busby had said about him. That was Johnny Carey. And my team, because if you do it, instantly you'll say somebody else. So
I'm sure there's a lot of what about?
Yeah.
And they won't play together.
So the goalkeeper was Schmeichel. Van der Sar, of course, is also of the highest level.
Running very, very, very close.
Harry Gregg is the most charismatic man you could want to meet as well. But Harry Gregg, we didn't actually ever win Harry never won a winner's medal in his time at United because he had injuries and whatever at the time. So Schmeichel, for me, was, and I'm picking a 4-2-4 here, which actually leaves White, it was boiling piss as it was said, out, because I left an absolute legend out. And straight away, I won't tell you who it is at the start, because if I do, they'll say, well, he don't know anything, but I'll explain why. So it was 4-2-4, and Schmeichel was in goal. Johnny Carey was in at number 2. Roger Byrne was in at number 3. And straight away, Byrne is fantastic. Tony Dunn was a great fullback. Dennis Irwin, wow, we are talking some fullback. Arthur Alberson's a great fullback.
Yeah, Paddy Evra. Paddy Evra was up there.
So, you know, I mean, you're not criticising, but I'm just going off what... And I'm going here of leadership. This team is leaders. Schmeichel was your leader in goal. Carey was one of the United's great captains. Roger Byrne was one of United's great captains. Then you've got your centre-backs. And now that is a real problem because the two are finally selected because I felt you had to have a partnership.
Jones and Smalling. Was it not Jones and Smalling? There's going to be arguments in the comments here if this isn't Jones and Smalling.
Obviously, Jones being the nearest thing that Sir Alex seen since Duncan Edwards.
God, I bet you wish you could take that one back.
The two I went for was Bruce and Pallister, but you could easily put Ferdinand and Vidic in there. Martin Buchan is one of the great sweeper type, so you could have put a centre half in there.
No Nobby, no Duncan.
So I'm not finished yet. I've only got the defence. Yeah. So 4-2-4. So then you're going to go with midfield. So my two in midfield were Robson and Edwards, and then you're going to go with 4 forwards. And
look who you've left out to play them two, Robson and Edwards. Not bad, I would suggest, but you've got no Roy Keane.
Yeah.
I'm imagining you're probably going to be playing Charlton up front, but Charlton could play midfield.
You've got to wait till you find out. Yeah. So you've got your 2 wingers. George will go at 7. We'll leave 11 for a minute. Tommy Taylor is still the greatest centre forward I've ever seen, but you could throw Mark Hughes in there, couldn't you?
Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Absolutely.
Cantona.
And Dennis Law had to go alongside as whatever. So then you come to 11. And Bobby Charlton, I saw Bobby Charlton in the youth team at United. Saw him in the reserves. I saw him make his debut against Charlton Athletic.
Are you going to say Charlton left wing? Because my granddad calls him a left winger.
I didn't think Charlton, he got played as a left wing a lot, but I don't think in any shape or form that was his best position. Played as a number 9. When I was a kid, he played as an out-and-out centre forward. I think Bobby Charlton's best position was when he played at number 8 and he played as that inside forward. So I'm not playing him as number 11. I've put Ryan Giggs as number 11 because Giggs has still played 900 and odd matches, has won quite a few things.
One or two things, I think, yeah.
Now, Charlton's the one that got left out. So again, there comes the sacrilege. Now, you could, and I had it pointed out by a really good mate, what you could have done, you could have put, because the centre halves were causing me a problem, Bruce and Pallister. You could have put Charlton at midfield with Robson, and you could have moved Edwards back alongside an outstanding centre half, for example. But that was my Manchester United side.
You've left 2 of our 4 Ballon d'Or winners out.
Go on.
Ronaldo.
Oh, sorry. You are talking to an old fart, obviously.
Ronaldo and Bobby Charlton. And I think it doesn't feel like a United legend. Before you start commenting, let me finish. It doesn't feel like he's a United
Ashley
legend.
Young's coming up here, I know.
He feels like a legend of the game, Ronaldo. And I think you should probably only be a legend at one club. And I feel like he's Real Madrid's now.
Yeah.
With scoring, I know, he's got a couple of goals, I think.
Yeah.
He was definitely one of the best, if not the best player I've seen with my own eyes in a United shirt. You may have a different story.
No. I think he unfortunately, as he finished with us, we'd matured him into a great player, and he probably has played better at Madrid, but he was bloody good with us. There's no doubt.
Wins a Ballon d'Or.
Also, the record
good.
goal story with Rooney. I mean, you understand me. So it's impossible. Which again, I come back to the point that if you want to support a football club, you support Manchester United, because if you looked at what my team was from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the zeros, Ronaldo obviously is in that one. So and then you pick 11. I mean, straight away.
You could pick an 11 from what you've left out. That would be outrageous. Yeah.
Well, Van der Sar could go in goal.
Yeah.
Gary Neville could easily go right back. Paddy Everett, Dennis Irwin most definitely could be in there. Vidic and Ferdinand could easily be there. Stam, yeah. So Stam and Edwards, for example, might have been that defensively thing. But if you're going 4-2-4 again, you've got to look at who. It's all right, people picking 11, but would they play as a team? So you're going 4-2-4 or 4-3-3, aren't you? So if you're going 4-2-4, Robson has to be in it, but Keane perhaps has to be in it more than Robson even. So.
Greatest captain in terms of things won.
Yeah, and Bobby could easily play in that mid. But that's where.
Oh my days! Imagine a midfield three of Keane, Robson, and Charlton. Behave yourself.
George up front.
Yeah.
On the wing, Dennis up front, Cantona up front, Ronaldo up front.
I mean, we've not even really mentioned Wayne Rooney.
No.
Who, I think a lot of Mancunians don't take him to heart because of various different reasons, but
10, 15 years' time, look at the record.
The player that played for Manchester, off the field, Rooney let himself down, I think, as United.
Do you remember his debut?
Yeah, do I?
Took his grandson Sam to
might be the best debut I've ever seen. I remember saying to my mate, what have we bought? Oh my God, what have we got here?
Just the hat-trick. Then fans,
his ripped shirt.
I know.
He's always big, stupid head. What have we bought?
We had that, the vein of the conversation. We had that 2-year spell again, didn't we, where he was growing up and Ronaldo was growing up, and we looked as though we were going to go off the cliff a little bit. Forget the years now, 5, 6.
Yeah, 04, 05, 06.
Yeah, and then it came, didn't it?
And even in that time as well, and this is why I think people have got to give Solskjaer time. Sir Alex, at that time, 04, 05, 06, now he didn't come lower than third, I don't think, in that time, but he also had Keane, he had Giggs, he had Scholes, he had Rooney, he had Ronaldo, he had Rio Ferdinand.
He'd have a goalie.
He had Gary, I think we had Tim Howard in that at the time.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Tim, yeah.
So sorry, maybe we didn't.
Yeah.
But he also had Gary Neville. We had the basis of an excellent team with a lot of experience and a lot of medals under their belt.
Still be around.
No, he went in 99 or 2000 to Wolves, didn't he?
Yeah.
But you still had an excellent football team. And it was the supporting cast, Kieran Richardson, Alan Smith, Mikel Silvestre, who maybe wasn't the worst, but you had Larry White come in for a little bit. Those supporting cast, Jemba and Kleberson, and they just they weren't going to. You had Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. And
now we've again, people may disagree, but now we've actually got a marvellous supporting cast, but we haven't got necessarily the 3 standouts.
Yeah. Oh, we've probably got one.
We've got the goalkeeper.
Yeah, and we've probably got Pogba, but if his heart's not in it,
his heart's not in it. He's obviously not in it, and they can glue that up all they want, but it don't look in it, does it? So they need 2 or 3, but they only do need 2 or 3 because I think they have got that supporting cast. And I think that supporting cast, if you go to McTominay and you go to those young 5, that supporting cast have got ability, but they've got heart and they've got team spirit.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, those 5 you mentioned earlier, Levitt, Laird, Garner, Williams, and Greenwood, I think they've all got character, which is such a rare thing. Like Ethan Laird, and we've not even mentioned Tuanzebe, McTominay, Rashford. Those have got character as well. Yeah. The lads that I think are going to make it are the ones that have got character. You go, could I see him wearing an armband one day? Well, I've seen Levitt wear it. Yeah, I've seen Ethan Laird wear it. I've seen Brendan Williams was captain for most of last season. Garner's captain United at every level. Yeah. I don't think I've seen Rashford wear it, but there's character there. McTominay, we know there's character there. And Axel Tuanzebe, I mean, I don't know what your opinion is. Yeah, he's a future United captain if ever I saw.
Actually, again, I got shouted down, but after a couple of penalties he came back to reality. But I said, okay, if you went back now, 1st of August, and you've got 80 million to spend, and you've got Tunnuzebe, and you know what the team needs, would you have bought Maddison instead of Maguire?
I still think we needed Maguire.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that, you know, would you have got away with Tunnuzebe?
Maybe.
But the thing is, who would have been alongside Tunnuzebe? Tunnuzebe with Maguire, fine.
Yeah, Rojo, probably not.
Lindehoff, possibly. The only worry I have on the younger ones, and Laird, sadly, because look at the physique on him. Is it Tuesday? It can be whatever day you want. I mean, but he does pick up injuries.
Yeah.
Tunnuzebe, sorry, he does pick up injuries, and you know that's more than the worry. You want that consistency as well, don't you? You'd rather have someone play 40 games and play as a 7 out of 10 than someone playing 20 games and getting 9s and 8s out of 10.
Luke Shaw, at the minute, I believe he's played 109 games for United
in 42 years.
And he's been injured for 107 of those games. It's not acceptable. No, the leg break would have taken
in fairness,
a significant number of those
because he
games.
was playing well, actually, wasn't he?
But I don't see any consistency in his play since he's come back. Whether that's through injuries, whether that's mentality, whether that's performance level, there's just a total lack of consistency with him. And I think there's a very real chance Brendan Williams is United's first choice left back come May. I think he could save us 50 million in the summer.
Come January, I think.
I don't think he was ever spending that in Jan, but
I think he'll be.
Be first choice by then.
I think he'll be first choice.
Might be first choice by weekend.
Might be first choice.
Well, yeah.
Well, I believe you're an Ashley Young fan. Sorry.
No comment.
There's only 4 of them in there, so don't mention Ashley Young.
I am having a party when he leaves. The sausage rolls from Greg's, for everyone's interested. Roy, thank you very much. This has been an absolute pleasure. If you want to check out some of Roy's work, United in the 60s, I can't wait to get my teeth into this one, but you've written about 5 or 6 books, haven't you?
About 15 on United.
Really? 15?
Duncan Edwards.
Crikey.
Busby Babes.
Get yourself on Amazon and go and check out some of these. And I'm sure we'll get you back on again in the very near future, Roy. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you're new around here. And also make sure to go and check out The Athletic. That is theathletic.co.uk/Howson. That is theathletic.co.uk/Howson. 50% off your yearly subscription with them. And you can get a month's free trial up front to check it out. Like I said, it is the new home of football writing. They have got some fantastic United content writers on there at the moment, and I believe they're going to start dipping into podcasts and video as well in the very near future. So thank you guys, thank you to Roy, and we'll see you in the next one. Laters.